students, today we are going to be learning how to shade in our work. So the tools we're going to need is a ruler, paper, sharpener, eraser, and pencils. HB pencils would do just fine, but please make sure that you sharpen your pencils. So we are going to be shading in this image right here. I've already pre-drawn this, but you can go ahead and freeze this image and draw it yourselves. We need to be looking at the direction of light and our value scales while we're working on shading our work. These are two very important aspects of shading. Now we have many different techniques of how to shade in our work. We've got hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, blending or smudging, scribbling, and circling as well. There are many more techniques in these, but this is a good start for us. So before we start, it is a good idea to put a piece of paper over the areas our hands are going to be placed on, especially when we're working with graphite, it smudges very easily. So for hatching, you are just going to draw little lines or ticks that overlap one another. It is going to be a little bit darker on one end and then eventually go lighter. For cross-hatching, it's the same technique of drawing our ticks. We're using the side of our pencils to draw the tick. This will give it a more smooth edge rather than the sharp edge. Both ways are fine. And then the crossing will come in where we cross over or create almost an X over the hatching. For the stippling method, it is very straightforward. It's just a matter of creating dots and making sure that the dots in the areas where it's darker, it's more compressed together. You can use the side of your pencil or the tip of your pencil. For blending and smudging, this is a method that a lot of students love to use because it creates a more soft effect. So you can use the side of your pencil to create the depth that you need, going darker in those areas, and then you can use your fingers or tissue to kind of blend out those areas. I would use a tissue to also wipe my hands because it might get a little smudgy. For the scribbles, just straightforward. We're scribbling in different directions, creating darker or overlapping over the areas where you'd like it to be darker. And for circling, for this method, I would use the side of my pencil to go over in areas, almost creating curls, using the side of my pencil to blend in areas and darkening the areas that I need. So here we go. These are the 6 methods or techniques of shading that we are going to look at. So now, going back to our worksheet, we are going to identify the light source that we're working with. So I'm going to put a little sun on the top right corner so that I understand where my light source is coming. So now the light source is coming this way, the shadow is going to fall that way. Areas on this side will be relatively lighter than areas on my left. So when I shade, I'm going to apply more pressure to the areas on the left. I'm going to sharpen my pencil so that we have a good understanding of what we are going to do. I am going to use a few methods from our shading techniques, maybe circling or blending and smudging as well. You can combine more than one shading techniques together. So the first object I'm going to shade is the cup. I'm going to go ahead and shade the side first so that I can understand where the depth or the darkest area of my object is going to be. I'm going to now start shading across, making sure that I am working with the shape. So I'm curving while I'm shading. I'm not only going straight across, I'm going to try my best to shade with the shape so that I can create a 3-dimensional object. So I'm going to slowly just add the areas that I feel are going to be darker, and I'm going to then slowly work my way over the object and add the depth as I need to. So in these areas, I am going to apply more pressure. Then I'm going to slowly fan out, apply less pressure towards the areas where it is relatively lighter. So I'm going to do that through the opening of this cup. We see some depth, so we're going to do the same thing. Try to shade out our object. I'm going to now observe my objects while I'm working, creating depth in the areas that I need to, and continue this with every single object that I have on my page. Once I've reached the stage where I've completed shading all of my objects, it is now time to shade the shadow. When we are shading the shadow, we need to identify or try to remember where our direction of light is coming from. So with the side of my pencil, I'm just going to go ahead and add some depth onto our table line and just gently add some color to it. You can see that I am now going to fan out the shadow from the edge of the cup. It is going to be darker where the object touches the table. You can use the tip of your pencil to highlight out various elements that might be a little or might have drowned in the background, in the shadow. Add some depth by adding pressure and then fanning or blending out your shadow. I'm going to add more depth and continue this until I've completed my shadow. At this point, you can go ahead and finish off your work by adding the final touches or your final details, outlining areas that might need a little bit more depth because it might have drowned in the background. You can see how quickly we can create depth in our work once we understand the different techniques of shading and being aware of our direction of light.